Thank you for coming, for attending this Dharma talk. Thank you for all of your help in supporting this community, both by attending, by practicing, and by financially supporting us. We need your help. Please continue if you can. So today's talk title is
Ramping Up Stories.
Ramping Up Stories. Something happens, and instead of just receiving it like you are being instructed by this old man to just receive your life, don't miss anything. If it shows up, it's supposed to be there. It comes with its own credit, its own ID card, its own permission, its own passport. Anything that shows up in your mind stream has to be there. There's nothing to object to, nothing to agree to, and certainly nothing to ignore. Passion, aggression, ignorance. Those are the three poisons. Those are the three things that catch us and turn us into a demon, or turn us into a god, a wonderful, delightful being who is completely addicted to pleasure. Is that wrong, incorrect? No, you can enjoy yourself. It's the addiction, it's the grasping, it's the demand that you get your way that will take you right down into what? Difficulty. You need to do it with the awareness, not with the thinking process, not with the constant stories about everything. The stories work relatively because we are attached to this relative mind, this body mind that is here. I'm old. I've been looking at this for a long time. And so it's very young, very painful to be born as a little person, as we all were, and then to go through mistreatment. Perhaps you didn't get mistreatment, and then try to find a way to work with that is basically sane and not just more control, more someone, your father, your mother, your society. Liberate yourself from that. You might need someone like me to scold you and to say over and over again, find out who you are. Don't get your identity from me or from anyone else. And don't believe your thoughts or your emotions or your feelings. Those are circular, because you try to stop them, you go in circles. You try to justify them or explain them or blame someone for them or some situation, even though it is relatively true. I'll say that again. Having a difficult feeling about something, even though this person, he, she, or they said or did or acted in such a way to trigger that emotion in you, that is your emotion. No one is pouring emotions into you. It's yours. Be responsible for how you feel. I can say it more stridently than that, but I won't. I'll just say, grow up. I won't say, grow the heck up. I'm picking on him a little bit. He doesn't mind too much, very much, a little bit. We did bring your pen in, I think. Juju. What do I do? How can I say this? I'm looking at this. I see it in myself. Otherwise I couldn't teach it. I didn't see the way something happens to me, or someone says something or does something. And then my situation, I would think, well, they shouldn't be saying that. Or why are they saying that? Why are they doing that? Or they shouldn't be doing that, or they shouldn't be saying that. Constant chatter at something, stories. It's not that there isn't a little bit of relative truth to it, but it doesn't go very far. It usually ends up in ramping up and ramping up and ramping up so that you're protecting. Why would you even do that? Well, I can tell you why you're doing that is because there's an imaginary self that fuels and feeds off from that kind of negativity, just the same way it feeds off positivity. If I were to pick any one of you out and just artificially just compliment you, I mean, you could just invent it and you could still feel complimented a little bit. You wouldn't feel much, but you feel a little bit. And if I were to come after you and criticize you, even just invent it. Doesn't even have to be something that it might be something you know isn't true. But if I come after you, and point it out in front of a group of people, you're probably going to have some reactivity to it. Embarrassing. And what is that? It's ego. If there's no solid part of consciousness that is real as a self, then you can't be insulted because there's no one there. So it can't find, it goes through, it goes beyond. And what you end up seeing as someone who has seen through the reality of an ego, that sees there is no solid self in the skandhas, form, feeling, perception, concept, consciousness. There's no solid being there. If you've seen through that, then all the insults that come your way and all the compliments that come your way, you see what they are. You see that they're without any substance, and they are more about the person who's complimenting you or more about the person who's criticizing you than they are about you. Why? There isn't one. There is no you. There's a body here. There's an old man with a waving hand. There's a growling voice. There's a shaking finger. And the apparent presence of somebody who's grouchy or strident or whatever you want to call it. But there's no one here. But there's something here, and I can tell you what it is. And you can do with it whatever you like. If you can see my intention, then it's probably good. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. I am here to help you liberate yourself from the prison of your mind. That's what I'm here to do. And I'm doing that with a vow. The vow to be with all things. The vow to save all beings. There are no beings, but there are consciousnesses that show up as forms, human beings that think they're solid and real. And since they think they're solid and real, they'll go to war with their neighbors. They'll go to war across the kitchen table with their partner, with their mate, with their children, with their mother, with their father, because they think they're right and the other person is wrong. And they have a whole story, ramps behind it to back it up. And they'll keep telling them, they might not be saying it out loud. They might say one of them out loud, and then the rest of them are that keep that hot air blowing on the tinder or the wood of ego to keep it burning, keep it feeling hot. Excuse me. Ramps. Ramping up. What was the title again?
Ramping up stories.
Thank you. So yeah, the first story, and then you have, instead of that one, or that one's even cooled off, you have another one right on top of that. So the first one is, she said, he said, they said, you said, and then you said it again, and you did it again. And then before that even dies out, and the person is across the table from you might be starting to explain or defend themselves, doesn't matter. You're right on it more with more stories. You do not want to let go of that because you feel supported, substantiated, validated by what you feel like. And you've been abused. Poor thing. When I say poor thing, sarcasm, yes, but that doesn't help. It's not going to help to be sarcastic to you or to your ego. The only thing I know of that will really help is maybe listen to a little bit of what I'm saying, consider what I'm saying, but then the majority of your attention needs to be not so much on what I'm saying, but what you can do. What can you do? Sit down, hold still, sit symmetrical, which the mind is asymmetrical all the time. It's spinning, going over here, and it's going to the hot area, the cold area, the tall area, the short area. Is going always looking for alternations or contrast between trying to get away from the difficult into the much smoother or easier. Sit still, observe, and whatever shows up, receive it. Receive it without comment. Receive it without analysis. Receive it. When you go to study the Dharma, when you read Dharma books, then you can do all the analysis you want. Have a good time. There's all kinds of scholars who are incredibly intelligent and can take material that you thought you understood and explain it in such a way that you think, maybe I'm missing something here. Read, if you want a good taste of that, read Dan Lusthouse. Take any one of his books, read it twice, and then come back and ask me questions about it. You may be amazed at what I'm able to respond to. Not because I've read Dan Lusthouse, I haven't. I thought you were going to ask a question, but you were just scratching your eyebrow. Why? Itches. Q&A. Yes. But the most important thing you can do, the most important thing, if you don't take anything away from this talk at all, other than my irritability, is train your mind, please. Train your mind. Don't get it from me. You don't have to become a Buddhist. You don't have to receive vows. I think it helps. I think you may need the glue of a vow. I certainly did. I held off doing this for a long time. We need that. Some of my closest students are very upset with me by the way I've been acting lately. When I say lately, the last 2 years. Aren't they? Aren't they? Yes or no?
So you're saying?
So I say. Can't get any agreement out of it. Sound like cloud. Can't be helped. I do not make choices. And you don't either. You just think you do. But if you look closely at your karma, at the causes and conditions that arise as your mind stream, your personality, you can see that what you do is backed up by all kinds of thoughts and rationale about what you're doing. So you're not really making choices. If you were making choices, you wouldn't do anything. Watching you. Will you try to figure out how to pay your rent?
But I was just I just replayed what you said. If you're not making choices, you're not doing anything.
I didn't say that.
Or you're doing something.
I said, what did I say? What did I say?
If you're making choices, you're doing something.
If you're making what did I say?
If you're making choices, you
Not doing.
wouldn't be doing anything.
If you think you're making choices, I didn't say think.
I think
If
you
you're
did.
making choices, you're not.
Maybe I don't.
I thought it was if you aren't making choices, you would be sitting still.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
That's a let's listen to what he heard. I didn't say that.
Okay,
Did I say that?
that's what I heard. But maybe I'm completely wrong.
I didn't hear that.
Okay, so how many of you were listening to what I said, and how many of you were listening to what you thought I said? That's actually occurs. You can actually listen to somebody, and as soon as the words come out, you immediately interpret right away, and you listen to. So I know you're coming back.
Yes, I need to wash my eyeballs.
Well, hurry up. Anybody else need to wash their eyeball? Okay. Did you hear it? How did you hear it, Hundo?
I'm confused at this point.
Oh. Okay, go ahead.
I heard you say, I don't know why you said it this way, but I thought I heard you say, if you're making choices, you won't be doing anything.
I don't think I said that.
That's what I heard.
But here's what I'm trying to point. Let's go back. I don't know exactly what I said, and I'm dyslexic, so I could be saying things backwards and I thought, that's not exactly what I meant to. So yeah, I can be doing that. You've seen me do that many times, haven't you?
Yeah.
Do things backwards. He straightened it out for me. What I'm trying to point out is that when you think you're making choices about things, you are actually under the auspices of dependent origination, the kind that is called karma, cause and effect, which gives the illusion that you reach for this. That looks like you're making choices. I'm picking this up. It's obviously my choice. And I'm putting it over here. I'm going to change it around. I have power over this. I don't have to put it down facing that way. I'm going to determine what I'm going to do. That kind of attitude can be brought into society, and you have the beginnings of a dictator. Not just the dictator in the world, but the dictator in here. The ego that's telling you this, telling you that. But if you see that you can't make a choice, then you begin to see what this is. You begin to see what that is. And you begin to see what motion is. You begin to see the radical, fundamental quality of anything that is occurring. And you begin to see that the actual occurrence itself is unreal. So nothing actually fundamentally happens. This is an illusion. This is an illusion. And also the idea that there is a someone, a self who decides something is an illusion. I want you to see that. Liberate yourself. Because if you don't liberate yourself from this life of passion, aggression, ignorance, pushing and pulling, shutting down, success and failure, and the big polarity that we're confused by is life and death. Those are not two separate things. You can't have a life without death, and you can't have death without life. They're not separate from each other. They're separated, but fundamentally not separate. If you think there's someone, if there's an identity, and you go back into the elements, in other words, die, go back into the fire, back into the water, back into the earth, back into the air, the body comes apart. Consciousness does not go with that unless you think it does. And if you think it does, then consciousness will actually try to do that. It will try to die because it thinks it's a person. But if you realize who you are, then your body can do whatever it wants to do. And it probably will die, and may die. I'm kind of surprised I'm still here. So, but this is going to come apart at some point. Your body's going to come apart at some point. But if you realize who you are, then nothing actually happens from the point of view of consciousness. Realize that. And when you realize that, help others with that, because people are going into terrible suffering. The nerve endings are everywhere. In the fingertips, in the eyes and ears, nose, tongue, body, mind, nerve endings, receiving. Life is suffering. The cause is wanting something else, as the Buddha said 2,500 years ago. I can say more, or we can have some questions. Go ahead.
Shoto bowing. Is ignorance at the root of the illusion of someone doing something?
Same one.
Shoto bowing. I'm wondering what it is we're seeing or what it is we're ignoring that allows that illusion to look like somebody's doing something, like we are somebody.
It's the imputation that I'm somebody and these are my hands, and even though we didn't make these, we didn't invent this, we didn't decide to become a human being. So there's an assumption that we are a separate being from everything else. Just start out with a very simple understanding of, if it weren't for your mom and dad, might be somebody here, but it wouldn't be you. It wouldn't be the feeling of who you are. The sense of being a separate being, that illusion of being a separate being is created by dependent origination. In a simple form is in the form of a mother and a father. But then there's mothers and fathers for those people. It's an astonishing illusion. It doesn't last. Yes.
Kelsey Bowen, are there times where the perceived separateness or the stories are helpful to the path?
Yes. Anything you perceive as separation or illusion is helpful. Do you mean, is it helpful when you believe them? Is that what you're asking?
I don't know.
So I don't know. I'm not saying that couldn't show up, but generally speaking, when you believe in something, you grasp at it and you hang on to it as a reference point that that's true. And if anything comes in counter to that, then you might go to war with that, might fight with it. And so that just creates more of what? First Noble Truth, suffering. Life is suffering. Yes.
Kelsey Bowen, is there a way to have stories without grasping? Sometimes I feel like there are stories, but there's ease and flow with them.
So let me clarify this. I'm not against the stories. I love stories. Let's make stuff up. I love it. It's the grasping, feeling like your story, your idea about what just happened, and somebody else's idea about what's are at war. This is what's happening in the Gaza Strip. It's the extension of that, this landslide of warfare that's been going on since the Peloponnesian Wars 2,500 years ago. And before then, I just use that because it's a long time ago. chaos going on. People right and wrong. Prejudice, intense. If somebody's a little bit different than you are, like they're not part of your family. But even sometimes, even in your family, there's warfare in the family between brothers and sisters, people who can't get along with each other, even though they have blood relation. So, sorry, coming back to the stories, yes, let's see that they're stories. Make things up. Go ahead.
Kelsey Bang, so I'm hearing that a little bit as the attachment or the ownership of the story that we tell ourselves is the problem, not the existence of the story.
Stories is this whole thing of the story. It's a huge play. Read Shakespeare. There's a master who understood the nature of this. All the world's a stage. So he was talking about this, and he wasn't a Buddhist or a meditator, but he had incredible insight into this situation we call a lifetime, and wrote about it. And so, yes, it's the attachment of the fixation. Any emotions or any feelings that you have, no matter how positive, negative, or neutral, do nothing with them but perceive them. If they show up in your mind stream, even though they seem to be triggered by your partner or your neighbor or someone you just met, seem to be caused by that, then you get in there and realize that I didn't have this feeling until I talked to them, until they said something to me. I was fine. When they said something, then suddenly emotions start to arise. And it could be something, just some kind of criticism of you, say as a mother or as a counselor. You're one of the worst counselors. You'd call yourself a counselor? How's that feel?
Fine.
Huh?
Fine.
Nah. You could yell at me and call me how can you possibly call yourself a Dharma teacher? You sit up here and aren't we supposed to be peaceful? Here you go up here all upset about everything. Shouldn't you be more like Thich Nhat Hanh? Shouldn't you be more like Dalai Lama? He never gets upset. Not in public. Well, we don't know. I don't know. Dalai Lama was a wonderful fellow and a great teacher, as was the Thich Nhat Hanh. But I'm picking on those gentlemen because they're incredibly famous, and this old man does not. And they're great teachers, and they have their students, and so. But look closely at your mind. This is what I'm endeavoring to promote. Let's say this is the way you can do this: is to hold still and watch the movement without suppressing it, without enhancing it, and without doing anything with it, but just observing it coming and going. Are you leaving us? Was it too difficult?
Oh, no.
Oh, good. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So now, does that hurt my feelings? What do you think?
No.
Yeah, it does. But I don't believe it. You can actually have emotions that come and go. Of course it does. I don't know them, but I have no idea. I could think of stories about why they're coming and going. I have no idea what it is. But the emotions are there, but I don't believe the emotions. It's like watching a play, very much like watching a play and having things happening in the play that are triggering emotions. And you have the emotions, but you realize that you're having the emotion, but you know it's a play. So it's fundamentally unreal. And what I'm saying is, as Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage. This is unreal. It is vividly, as Trungpa Rinpoche says in the Sadhana Mahamudra, it's vividly unreal in emptiness, yet there's still form. He is endeavoring to convey in words a way you can work with this situation to not shut it down and pretend or think, oh, I don't have any feelings. No, you have the feelings. Have them. You actually feel all the way to the center of the earth. If you awaken to your true nature, you'll be swamped with emotions that you've been able to cover up until you realize your true nature. You've been able to cover them up. Here they come. And if you're already being tickled by that or rubbed by that or poked by that, then I'd say just continue to sit. Continue to turn into the negativity. Work on the greatest defilements first. This comes right out of Atisha's 7 Points of Mind training. Hard to do. It's hard to even say that to somebody because I would like to say, well, don't do that yet. Just do something else for a while because it's just too painful to do that. You may have to do that. Difficult. Yes.
Mizuku bowing, I happen to know why they were leaving, and my question is about the impulse to tell you that because I projected that you like
That my feelings would be hurt.
mhm.
Yeah, and what I say, and what it is Seth, right? Seth. Yeah, Seth said, yeah, no, it didn't hurt my feelings because the projection, I'm speaking for you here. I don't know what was going on, but probably, because I'm a Dharma teacher, I might be beyond that. Would that be close to what you were thinking then?
I was thinking that if I were sitting where you were, I would know that they were leaving because of their own whatever they have going on, and it doesn't say
Are you a
anything about.
therapist?
Yeah,
Gotcha. Yes. I don't do that. I just feel.
okay.
You explain. I don't explain anything. If I did, then I'd be right in the trap that I was in when I met Coben, thinking I knew everything. I don't know anything. I'm teaching out of what I'm looking at. You don't have to stop feeling. You can feel it. It's a good thing. Save all beings, put others before yourself. I wasn't going to say it. I'm going to say it. But I love those people. That's why I can feel that. I don't know them. May never see them again. So they had to go to another Dharma talk somewhere?
Mizuku bowing. Is that impulse to tell you why they were leaving that instance? Is that meddling with the way you?
A very good question. It's in a sense it is. A little bit of it, but it's not wrong to do that. But it's the whole idea, as you've heard me say hundreds of times, is about awareness, not about right and wrong. So you may want to, and let me say it this way, I had no curiosity about it. It's not that I'm dismissive and I don't care about it, but I'm somewhat along the lines of what Seth is saying without the commentary, without the discursiveness that is showing up for Seth. And of course, I don't know what's happening in your mind, but I'm just making a little bit of a presumption there. But I don't have a track of thinking about it. I just know it more.
There's more there, but I'm not sure.
So I'll say it another way, and then if this brings up questions, then it's probably a pretty good thing for me to say. But that's what I like your questions is that's me walking out of here. Those aren't separate people. I am those people. I'm you. You ask a question, I'm you. Just like the person's about to ask me a question, I am them also. Sanho.
So I'm very disappointed that the person who left did not tell you that they were leaving to clean their eyeballs. And that really does bring up for me a question, which is, if I were that person, I totally would have said that because it's hilarious, right? After the blind guy says it and leaves the room to literally go clean his eyes. But is adding that element to the story, is crafting that moment in any way kind of out of accordance with the teachings?
I don't know. It's funny. I mean, it's funny to me, but it's funny to you, and it's funny to Paushan. No, it's not funny to Paushan. And it's also not funny to Yulong. So when I nodded over to Yulong, is that funny? And he just kind of shrugged. So he did not laugh. But if we go backwards through that, then we would have to probably set up another study group somewhere to do that. Yes, sir.
Shoto bowing. With that situation where we have like an explanation, like I think Seth brought up, like you would understand why they were leaving. Is that a kind of ramping up stories that we're doing to ourselves?
It is. That's a topic. It's a little bit of a story, and it's not that those are wrong. It's just that those actually that keeps you away from the emotional stuff. So that's the area you can practice in. It's just feel. Whatever shows up, it's yours. Don't miss your life, as I've been saying for 100 years. Don't miss your life by trying to be somebody else. And my other way of saying is don't improve. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't stop yelling at somebody, or you shouldn't stop interrupting somebody, and you shouldn't do a lot of things, but don't set up a standard that you need to live up to. That's a relative way of working with your life, not incorrect. It's just that it doesn't get to the core situation, the core issue, or the core disturbance, which is belief in a self. It'll keep you away from that. You can keep your distance because you always settle for the explanation of it rather than not know. And not knowing is the emotion. The emotion does not know, it just feels. So go there. But if you're presented with the opportunity to feel deeply, please feel, even if that feeling is anger, even if that feeling is jealousy, don't leave what you feel for the cause or the story about it if you can help it. And if you do leave it, then be aware that you're doing that. Be aware that you're moving away from the truth of the initial situation, the fundamental situation as it is, for what you think it is, what you feel that it is, what it should be this way, or that way. Notice I said what you feel that it is. That's not a feeling, that's a thought about feeling. Go ahead.
Junshi bowing. What does it look or feel like to have a feeling and not believe it?
It's just a feeling. And that part of the consciousness we call the ego is probably in great consternation or suffering or fear or panic, starting to panic in that area, that something's coming apart. This should not be happening. That's the kind of little echo you'll hear around the echo chamber of ego. This shouldn't be happening. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve this reinforces the me feeling. More, please. Good area for questions.
Junshi bowing. What are some signs, or how might we know if we are stepping away from the feeling into the stories and explanations?
Just the ramp. That's the title of what was the title?
Ramping up stories.
Ramping up stories. We just notice that you're leaving. We have to see you have a story. It might be, if I were to act something, I want to make up a story. Well, I just asked her to do this, and what did she do? She started arguing about that, telling me that was my responsibility. What are you asking me to do that for? So, well, the next time she says that I'm not going to put up with that. Or you might be talking to that person and say, you're not looking at this. You just kind of argue with the person about it. So you keep ramping up a story, and then they say something, and then you come and lay something else on it. And you did that before. Remember last week when I said that we did this and this and this, and then you went ahead and did this. We ramp up, we come back with another story from another angle. We keep reinforcing the original misunderstanding, which is nothing happened. Go ahead.
Junshi bowing. It seems like it's hard to tell if I'm
It is.
feeling it or telling myself I'm feeling it.
This is why it's so important to just continue. And even when it's very, very difficult, to just return to the wall, return to sit down, hold still, do nothing, sit there and do it a lot of it. You have to do a lot. I hesitate to tell people how much, because it sounds like too much. It's just, I can't sit there for hundreds and hundreds of hours over the next few years, but it seems to be necessary to do that. And I think it's somewhat different for each person, but it seems to be a lot of holding still and witnessing the way in which the mind works. As Trungpa Rinpoche said, make friends with yourself, or get to know yourself. Don't get your identity or your understanding of yourself from anybody, including the teacher. You might need the teacher to badger you a little bit, or scold you, or push on you to get you to look at what you are.
Thank you.
Sano.
Sanho bowing. We take a vow not to dwell on past mistakes.
Yes.
Can you speak more about that vow?
Yes. So this doesn't mean you don't remember past mistakes. It's the dwelling on them that is being addressed there, to actually continue to think how you've done this or done that. And like in my situation, if I were to use my own, which I don't often do that, but I will right now, or maybe I do it a lot. When I was young, even as I got older, I was stealing, like the thief. and stealing from my friends and just but I couldn't stop it. Where that come from, I had no idea. Even at the time I would do it, and then I would think I shouldn't do that. That's not good. I shouldn't be doing that. And then I would find myself doing that again. And even now, thinking back to that, it's just a sad feeling. But I'm not particularly dwelling on it because I can see that it was just what it was. It's just a situation that showed up, and there was no one there then. There's no one there now. So if you dwell on past mistakes, this is meant to reinforce the sense of a separate self who was bad, who should have been better. So it's not meant to reinforce some kind of fundamental badness or wrongness or mistakenness. It's just meant to we just acknowledge. It's part of the vow you receive. You fully avow that this happened. You did this, and this, but we don't dwell on it. It's like I sometimes say, if you step on somebody's toe, or if you bump into somebody, or you forget to do something or live up to a commitment, you said, yes, I will do that for you. 3 days later, they say, I thought you were going to do this or do that, or bring this over, or take this back, or something like that. Then you apologize once. That way, the apology is actually meant for them. If you apologize more than once, it's meant to get forgiveness or get off the hook or smooth over your ego disruption. Just say, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mozoku bowing.
Louder, please.
With the what you just said about apologizing for somebody else, if we're aware that we're apologizing because we really want something from them, or it's really not about them, we're not considering how something showed up for them, should we just not apologize?
I wouldn't get too technical. You should apologize if you've let somebody down or somehow abused them. That's a kind of a heavy word, but somehow disrespected somebody, or maybe forgot to do something they asked you to do, and you kind of let them down. Apologize. And I mean, one time, say, I'm sorry I let you down, or however you want to characterize it. Only once. Then it's about them. Then they can do whatever they want. Or don't wait around for forgiveness. They might say, "Oh, that's all right." They might not. They might mean it. They might not mean it. But that's about them. We're talking about you and how you're going to work with this. And so the idea is, on that situation, you have let somebody down. So you could say, "I'm sorry about that. I forgot," or something like that. And then no explanation. Even if you have one, no explanation. Keep it very, very simple. That way it's simple for you, simple for them. And then it's clear. Then if the situation comes up similar to that, then perhaps you will remember to do what you agreed to do, keep your agreements. Yes.
Mozoku bowing. With you mentioning, the emphasis on apologizing for somebody else, not because you're trying to get something out of it. What is that for? Somebody, like, what is the function of an apology in putting that person before you? Like putting that person first. So if I'm
not sure what is this, are you ramping something up here?
Probably.
I mean, it's just very simple. It's like you said, when you get a minute, will you put this here? And say, yes, I'll do that. And then later on, you had a minute and you didn't put it there, and they come and say, so did you say you were going to put that? I said, yes. I'm sorry, I slipped my mind. Simple. You don't have to go into any kind of existential explanation about who or about what, or you're not going to be able to figure this out. Keep it very simple. Now, do you still have a question? Then I'm happy to address that.
Mozoku bowing. On the receiving end of an apology, or I'm just, when you say it's for them, on the receiving end of the apology, what is the function of that apology, or how do we receive an apology?
Well, just like that, you could say it's okay, or you could say, or you could say thank you. You could say almost anything. We're just talking about very simple social a situation, that we need to respect that situation. We're not going to live by that social strata necessarily. But we also aren't going to ignore it and pretend like we're monks living in a mountaintop. So we're not going to apologize for anything. Some kind of ideal situation. Michelle, did you have a question? I know you did earlier.
I did, but it was kind of answered.
Oh, kind of answers. That's a good book title. Kind of answer.
Michelle, but now it's coming back again.
Well, if the question will come back, the answer will come.
It was about I lost it.
We get to watch you lose it. Yes, sir.
Shadow bowing, can the context or the story of a situation show up and it not take us away from the feeling?
I think so. Yeah, all kinds of, you can do hundreds of things at once. Count on hundreds of probably, you can do all kinds of, the mind can just do anything at once. What I'm addressing here, trying to address as a Dharma teacher, is when that part of the consciousness, which doesn't really have any parts, but it can have whatever it wants. The consciousness always finds a form that it needs, and it will find enlightenment. But if it finds enlightenment, it's not enlightenment. Because it's not something else, not something you find or discover. It's something you're not separate from. Would be a relative way to talk about it. But it could show up in all kinds of different ways. If I'm understanding what you're asking me. Yes.
Shadow bowing. So in the midst of the talk or what you're talking about, you're not, am I understanding you're not encouraging us to stop ramping?
No, there's no standard. Good question. I'm not encouraging. I'm saying to just observe that. Just observe the way you ramp. If you really observe it, it will just run out of energy. But if you do anything with it, you try to stop it, it'll go into the shadows and ramp, or it'll change the shape of the ramp so it doesn't look quite so much like a story. It'll look more like the truth. You'll actually go into areas of it that are undeniable. Use that. It's like being in a courtroom. Or, but that's a good area to talk. There's no standard for any of this. That's why it's so difficult. You're not going to have a success story. You actually won't know. I sometimes say it this way: if you realize your true nature, you won't know it. Because realizing your true nature, realizing that you are not a separate being from anything. So only way you can know something else is to be separate from it. That's relative knowledge. You're over here and you know that. It's not that the living being who has realized their true nature doesn't also have a body consciousness that tells them when they pick something up or put something down, they know when that happens. But that's all there is to it. There's no story with it. No explanation, no validation, no justification. Yoka.
Yoka, question from Martin in Latvia. Sokuzan said the person who left was Sokuzan. Isn't it lonely if everyone is Sokuzan? Bowing.
It's no more lonely than if everyone's Martin. How's it over there? There is no over there. It's just this. It's just this. Realize it. You don't have to drop acid. That's an experience. This is not an experience. This is reality. I have no credential other than what I'm saying. And if, as I often say, some people are getting upset with me when I say, get out of here. I don't mean to leave. I want you to stay here. I want you to listen to this. I want you to take this to heart. Listen to what I'm saying. Find out who you are. You don't have to fall at my feet. You don't have to do any of that. Just find out who you are so that when death comes without warning, you're ready for that. This is your preparation for death, as my teacher told me, Gongpa Rinpoche. This is not some kind of this is your preparation to see that part of duality is hidden from you as some other death. This is death. If you realize this, you're already dead because you realize that it's not two. Life and death are not not two different things. Yes.
Well, Divine, are you ramping up the invitation for us to leave if we're not getting what you're saying or find it uncomfortable?
Not actually. You all know who you are. Anybody that's here is probably going to stay here. But if there is someone that's just checking in that wants another kind of teaching, I'm inviting you. Go somewhere else. If people start leaving, like the two young people who got up and left a little while ago, it was kind of, it's kind of fun to believe, to watch myself believe that I'd somehow said something that offended them. That was much more fun than actually thinking that they had something else they had to do, like self-suggestion. Why would that be more fun? Because it's an illusion. It's an illusion. This is not true. This has no fundamental substance. You cannot try to remember what happened on March the 13th, 2003. If anybody in this room was probably alive at that time. Can't remember that, even though a whole day with all kinds of things happen, unless you have a diary, and then you have to read a record of it. The memory is, we're flooded with things all the time. We can't remember even about 2% of it. And when we do, then we're remembering our ideas about it rather than the actual event. You can't remember an actual event. You need language and words and concepts and abstractions to actually keep track of that, because this visual, auditory, sensory eruption of otherness is so incredibly intense and seems so real that we accept the reality rather than thinking, this is pretty shaky, I should write this down. Yes.
Well, Divine, I still want to ask, do you perceive a ramping up of that kind of response from yourself, bowing?
Do I see that in myself?
Do you see a ramping up of that?
Yes, I couldn't teach it. I couldn't talk about the ramping up if I didn't watch it happen in my own consciousness.
Well, Divine, but with the I don't know, the stridency, I guess is the word that has been used quite.
Strident or
Do you perceive
crankiness.
of ramping up of your stridency in Dharma talk?
A little bit, maybe. A little bit.
Oh, Divine, what is that?
Damn, do I know. My explanation for it a few minutes ago is I'm old, so my death isn't far away from me. It might be a few months or a few years, could be. It's hard to say. There's no way. There's no way there are people in here that may die before me who are a lot younger. So, but I'm feeling that's I don't have long to be here, and sometimes I feel like I should really emphasize this. So there's a few people here that just need to hear that, so that you don't just it doesn't work to say it this way, but I think I will anyway. Don't waste this life just going in circles and looking for something else. What you're looking for, you're looking at. You just project onto it what it is. I'm saying, look at it. Start out with something simple. That wall is your mind. Look at it and watch the way you continue to invent things that are not that wall. Invent stories. All you have to do is observe them. You don't have to stop them. You don't have to be a more mindful person. You don't have to follow your breath. You don't have to count your breaths like some teachers do. Is that incorrect? No. Do whatever they want. If that's your teacher, do what they say. But if you're listening to me, if I'm your teacher, you might want to consider doing what I'm telling you to do. Is hold still, sit symmetrical. You don't have to chant mantras, but if you do, I'll teach you how to do that. Sit down, hold still, watch the asymmetry, the pushing, the pulling, shutting down, opening up, going this way, going that way, getting happy, getting sad, all of that. If you sit long enough, you'll experience all of those emotions come and go. Do not fix anything. realize your true nature, that's why it's sometimes called returning to your true nature, because you came out of your true nature into this temporary situation called a human form, which is an illusion. You have the opportunity to see this is unreal. But most of the world is just making it real, even though they see people dying around them all the time. They go, well, it's not going to be me. I'm the one who's killing the people. Like it's happening to some people, as we know. It's painful. Is it painful? It's really painful. What can you do about it? Find out who you are, because you're not separate from all that warfare. You're not separate from the death and destruction. You're not separate from the perpetrators or the people who are being murdered.
Well, Sokubowing, are there stories that help us see how we're not separate, or help us put others before ourselves?
Yes, there's all kinds of stories like that. This is what Chazan's been talking about this since he first started talking about basic Buddhist teachings. He's been talking about all the stories. Read there's just so much I could go on about it. There's so much of stories that are traditional stories about the Buddha, about various teachers down through the centuries that have taught in different ways. Just like the teaching of Marpa with Milarepa. They had Milarepa, who was a murderer, so a pretty difficult student, you might say, back in 1200 or whenever it was. And he came to him and he said, build a house. And they built houses out of stone there in Tibet. Build me a house over there. Build me this building. He built it and got it almost done. And he said, no, I didn't want it there. I wanted it over there. So he had to take it all down, move all the stones over there. I don't know how many times. Anybody knows it's 7 different houses he had to build. And so did Milarepa say, you're pretty strident. Am I trying to say I'm Marpa? No, I'm just saying that everything, if you have a teacher, and I may be your teacher and I may not, you might just listen to me a lot. You'll know if I'm your teacher or not. But if you're going to fight with me, or if you're going to argue with me, or if you're going to accuse me of things, then there's a good chance I'm probably not your teacher. There's nothing in this for me. I don't get any credential out of having 100 students, let alone one. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to get you to go away. I'm saying then you might want to consider that whatever the teacher does or says is a teaching. That doesn't mean that because I'm saying it's a teaching, doesn't necessarily mean to say that it's socially or culturally correct. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your consciousness and the consciousness of the apparent teaching person. That teaching person is endeavoring to correct with you out of what they are understanding and trying to work with you out of your way of covering up your understanding so you can protect your ego, your self-centeredness. Simply put, or complicated. This doesn't mean that anything the teacher does is somehow correct or right. That's a cult. I'm not talking about because sometimes even the Tibetan tradition sometimes says that anything the teacher says that I will do. I don't agree with that. Anytime that whatever the teacher says that I will do, I don't agree with that. I was taught that. I don't agree with that. I think you should do what you think you should need, what you think you should do. Yes, sir.
Ian Bowen, what's the difference between obeying and receiving everything as a teaching?
Observe. Don't do anything. If you've listened to me 10 times, you've heard me say at least 3, don't do anything unless you have to. And if you can look at the teacher and the teacher says, you need to sit more. What are you going to do?
Consider sitting more.
We'd consider it, but it's not a command. If I ever come to you and say, and try to tally it up so that to see, okay, you're not, you made a commitment to do this. Anytime anybody even commits to me, I don't really hold them to it. I just watch them break the commitment to themselves. I do the same thing I'm talking about. I just observe. I observe the whole world fall apart. And what is falling apart? Nothing, because it's an illusion. So nothing to obey. I'll do anything I say to do. Consider it, we have a forum here, we have a monastery, we have walls, we have the dawn strikes the bell, the Hanan bell, it's struck at a certain time just because we need some kind of a forum because our minds are so all the time. So we have something, and everyone relates to this differently. Some people are fully ordained monks. They're not, just like Shoto went down to Ohio for several days. I mean, I would think it would have been great if you could have stayed here, but your particular life situation took priority over that. I could see it, you could see it. I didn't disagree with you on that, did I, at all?
No.
No. Were you made to feel guilty because you were leaving?
No.
Did you make yourself feel guilty because you were leaving?
No.
Okay, good. That's a start. Or is that a finish? So you're done feeling guilty?
Oh, no.
Oh. Just checking. Huh?
Thanks for clarifying.
You're welcome. So,
Talk about how does the stridency or the intensity benefit us as students?
how does it benefit you? I don't know, maybe it won't. I have to do it. I don't have a cause and effect dynamic going on. If I had that, I certainly wouldn't be strident. Because my goodness, then I'd lose a lot of students and I wouldn't make near as much money just getting filthy rich at this. So I don't know. I mean, I don't mean to be dismissive of your question. It's a valid question, but I don't know. That's just what shows up. And if I go this direction, why is that happening? The only thing that comes back is I just see, like, I just want to reinforce that as much as I can. It's very important. My teachers didn't do that, maybe as much as I'm doing that. I don't know. Coben didn't hardly at all. He let everything just slide by. But he was more enlightened, you could say, than I am. I'm not as enlightened, so you have to deal with my pissy behavior. I want you to see this. It's worth it. It's worth seeing what this is. The downside, the upside is you're liberated. The downside is you have to deal with all the suffering in the world. You got rid of your own personal suffering. Now you have all the rest of the suffering. The only relief you have is there's no one who's suffering. There's just suffering. There's just the First Noble Truth. Life is suffering. And it's all yours as long as you're alive, going to receive that. And you receive it. You're no longer anyone at the gate determining what suffering is allowed in, what isn't. The personal situation is gone. The walls of the mind have collapsed for you. And it is not an event. So therefore you be like nothing happened. Yes, sir.
Yokabowing, another question from Martine. Is receiving and not doing anything unless we have to the essence of being responsible of my feelings? Question.
That's pretty close. You just, whatever shows up, just receive and don't produce. Just a lot, you have nerve endings, the sense of touch produces nothing. Sense of smell produces nothing. Sense of seeing doesn't produce sights. Sense of hearing doesn't produce sounds. The sense of thinking likes to interpret everything. And should it? Sure. There are ways you could explain why that's happening that way. With the human form, something's got to coordinate this whole situation. It's just that it gets carried away and starts to want control of everything.
Sokuzan, that couple that left, they were very worried about it being rude if they left, but she has a lot of hip pain. And I encouraged them to stay as long as they could and leave when they had to.
Yeah, totally. And that's true with everybody here. I think I make that clear. If you need to leave, leave. This is not run like the traditional monastery where you can't leave until the gong rings, or you can't come in if everybody's sitting. You can come in and sit anytime you want. If there's 15 people all sitting here and they're all perfectly still, you are not interrupting anyone. This is just more ego crap to think that you're going to come in. Now, if you overdo it and come in and take your car keys and throw them against the wall in front of you, like some people have done, and even they weren't corrected. They were listened to, but they weren't corrected. So you do the best you can. to be quiet and be respectful, but you don't have to live up to a standard. Some people are extremely quiet. Some people do different things. Some people wear colorful clothes, and if they do, then we say, well, let's try to keep that to a minimum. So we try to modify it a little bit. Everyone in here is wearing either dark colors or black or dark gray. This is fine. So just, I think it helps. Consciousness is, all the consciousnesses are not separate from each other. Just like if we all, something I've been thinking about doing is having, everybody has to eat horseradish. I got an instant agreement from in-law. Do you like horseradish? No. So what am I being silly? But I'm just saying it's like those, all the sense fields, the 5 sense fields, the 6, including the mind, are talking to each other all the time. And this is why sitting meditation eventually starts to synchronize, is to use that relative word, synchronize body and mind, synchronize the sense fields, so that the what looks out of sync to ego, to consciousness, is completely there's complete equilibrium without doing anything other than just being aware. Doesn't have to be adjusted or fixed. I think I've gone way over the scheduled time for this. Jisho, didn't you have a question? Good. Okay. Thank you for coming, for attending this Dharma talk. Thank you for all of your help in supporting this community, both by attending, by practicing, and by financially supporting us. We need your help. Please continue if you can.